Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. In the Snow Demon Sect's waiting area, Huo Yuhao focused even more intently on the fight going on. She realized that Huo Yuhao wasn't just a difficult character to deal with in terms of business negotiations. Even with only his right hand, he was still very strong. Huo Yuhao was naturally using his evolved million-year soul skill, imitation. In fact, he had no choice. Once his opponent moved, he could tell that Chen Lu's main strength was his speed. At the same time, his own greatest flaw was his current lack of agility. Huo Yuhao had used his spiritual shock earlier, and knew his opponent would exercise caution against it. Moreover, he didn't want to overuse his spiritual shock, which was his strongest killer move. The more he used an ability, the easier it was for his opponent to find flaws in it. That was why he used his imitation to conceal his figure and disappear in the air. As long as he didn't shift too much, it would be very difficult for his opponent to determine his position from the ripples in the air. Through his spiritual detection, Huo Yuhao also discovered that Chen Lu's martial soul was his calves. One's calves were points of exertion for one's strength. From this, he could tell that Chen Lu was very strong in terms of speed and explosive power. After pausing for a moment to assess the situation, Chen Lu immediately reacted. He quickly turned around. His third soul ring shone brightly, and he immediately sprang into the air. His legs intersected in the air as he kicked out. Instantly, he created several illusory projections of his legs in the air. Every projection carried a streak of dark green light, and a piercing sound reverberated in the air. In a flash, countless projections appeared in the air and filled the stage. Without a doubt, Chen Lu was using a high-frequency area attack to determine Huo Yuhao's position. His spiritual power wasn't weak, since he hailed from the body sect. As he focused to sense Huo Yuhao's position, he would immediately capture Huo Yuhao's position once there were any strong soul power undulations. Indeed, a streak of dark golden-green light caused a ring to ripple before Huo Yuhao's wheelchair appeared once again. He had used his right hand to block the kick blade, but seemed a little pathetic as he did so. Chen Lu snorted and quickly jumped up again. His third soul ring was still shining, and his legs intersected as they kicked out at the same time as he charged towards Huo Yuhao. Streaks and streaks of dark green projections engulfed him. Amid the piercing whistles, the light blades were all aimed towards Huo Yuhao. However, it was at this moment that something weird appeared. Huo Yuhao suddenly rose several meters into the air and avoided the blades with an unbelievably deft movement. At the same time, he made a turn in the air which seemed to completely violate the laws of physics. He charged towards Chen Lu. Chen Lu was stunned at this moment. Even a soul master with wings couldn't have made such a dodging action in the air. It involved countless swaying movements mid-air. Is his disability fake? Otherwise, how did he manage to dodge everything so quickly in mid-air? Chen Lu couldn't be bothered by anything else, too horrified by this action. He quickly shut his legs, and a beam of intense bronze light shone behind his back. Just like Huo Yuhao had predicted, his body soul was his calves. In addition, his second awakening was a bronze-ranked one. Instantly, Chen Lu's whole body grew by more than a meter. His calves also became extremely thick, tearing his pants open. His legs intersected as he kicked out. Amid the terrifying bronze light, his calves were like two huge awls unleashed against Huo Yuhao. As his calves swept through the air, it felt as if the air had been torn apart. Huo Yuhao's speed fell drastically. Chen Lu was still living in the shadow of Wang Yanfeng's defeat. Right now, Huo Yuhao was demonstrating some very weird abilities. He had to give his all at this point. The second awakening of his body-soul was indeed frightening. His body-soul became very strong, and covered a domain that no ordinary soul masters could compare to. Even a soul emperor couldn't achieve a fighting strength like him. Something that left Chen Lu shocked happened again. In his opinion, the only way Huo Yuhao could avoid his attack was by resisting it directly. It was impossible to dodge. After learning from Wang Yanfeng's mistakes, he didn't force his soul power out of his body. He gathered the strength of the second awakening in his calves. In this way, he wouldn't be affected even if Huo Yuhao switched places with him. However, something weirder than what had happened to Wang Yanfeng occurred. Huo Yuhao and his wheelchair broke, just as Chen Lu's calves struck him. Yes, they broke. Countless streaks of bloody light burst out, and the broken wheelchair scattered in all directions. Everyone exclaimed and jumped up in shock at this scene. Chen Lu was in a daze. However, he also discovered that something was wrong at the same time. That was because he didn't feel as if he had contacted anything when he struck Huo Yuhao. A deep blue sword light, that seemed as if it wanted to tear the 9 heavens apart, silently appeared not far away behind Chen Lu. That deep blue sword light was shiny and transparent. It was so clear that it seemed like it was formed with a water crystal. Wherever it passed, it formed a deep blue light screen. It appeared just at the moment when Chen Lu finished his previous attack, and had yet to unleash his next attack. The timing was perfect. Unparalleled chill, Empress Sword. This time, Huo Yuhao was the one holding the Empress Sword. The Snow Lady had disappeared. Chen Lu's eyes shone with light. In the face of such a crisis, he didn't panic at all. Among the younger generation disciples of the Body Sect, he was one of the best. Even though his cultivation was inferior to Wang Yanfeng's, he was only still 18 years old. In terms of talent, he might even be better than Wang Yanfeng. Wang Yanfeng lost at the hands of his own attack, but Chen Lu was even more cautious after the loss. After realizing something was amiss, he didn't even turn around to look. He immediately activated his 5th soul ring. A pitch-black soul ring shone brightly, and Chen Lu did a half-crouch. Behind him, a 3rd leg silently extended out. This leg was also covered in a greenish-bronze glow, and looked identical to his own legs. The 3 legs bent at the same. As a low-pitched roar sounded, Chen Lu seemed to have overcompressed the air beneath him, causing an explosion to spread out. He released a projection from his body after this. The bronze light engulfed his entire body. The weird thing was that the bronze projection revealed the form of a mutant with a dragon's head and a frog's body. Just as he completed this, the unparalleled chill ferociously slashed his body. It sounded like an all had struck a huge bell. There was a tremendous echo across the entire arena. It even shook the stage slightly. Chen Lu was smashed down to the ground by the sword, and his body sank a foot into the floor. The mutated projection that was supposed to protect him was also covered with a deep blue layer of light. It froze instantly. The spectators were bamboozled by this series of changes. There were very few who could tell what was actually happening. Undoubtedly, Chen Lu was suffering. However, why was he at a disadvantage? What did Huo Yuhao do to him? Very few people understood the sequence of events. Only those who were very keen could guess that Huo Yuhao was using an illusion. In the Snow Demon Sect's waiting area, all their team members looked very serious now. Right now, they had just realized that Huo Yuhao was able to pose a huge threat to them. His abilities seemed to be endless. He used the ultimate ice, illusions, summoning, and even soul tools. How was a soul master able to possess all these skills? Even though Wei Na and Mu Shui knew Huo Yuhao, they didn't know much about him. Even after investigating his background, they only knew that he had twin martial souls, one spiritual type and the other ultimate ice type. In addition, he had turned the tables in the previous tournament. However, all this had been accomplished when his body was in its normal condition. Right now, only his right hand could move. Even though he had twin martial souls, how many of his abilities could he unleash? They were bound to be greatly weakened. However, they understood some things after watching the first 2 fights. Even when Huo Yuhao had problems moving, his fighting strength couldn't be underestimated. He was not inferior to a Soul Emperor even when handicapped. The most frightening thing was how mysterious his fighting strategies were. Wang Yanfeng lost so ridiculously, and Chen Lu was also losing right now. After the flying type soul tools on his shoulders raised Huo Yuhao into the air, they shot out light that propelled his wheelchair towards Chen Lu. Huo Yuhao raised his right hand, and his dark golden terraclaws appeared. As someone who possessed the ultimate ice, he was well aware that his opponent's power depletion from that attack wasn't very great even though he had used all his strength. Chen Lu used his fifth soul skill at the critical moment, which greatly resisted his attack. It was Chen Lu's mutant projection that was frozen, and not Chen Lu himself. He was only delayed right now, because he was still affected by the chill brought about by the ultimate ice. Huo Yuhao thought privately that if he were in his peak state, he would be able to completely suppress his five-ringed opponent, even if his opponent was from the body sect. He might even be able to crush him. Facing what he was now, he could completely rely on his ice explosion to continue harming his opponent. At the same time, his speed wouldn't be so slow. Were it not for his body condition, there was a loud crunch, and a huge crack appeared in the ice. It looked like Chen Lu was about to break out from the ice. Huo Yuhao's expression turned serious, and he swiped his right hand. The complete version of the dark golden terraclaws was unleashed. No one could compare to him in terms of capturing the perfect timing. Just as the dark golden lights from his terraclaws arrived, the ice broke apart, and Chen Lu escaped. Chen Lu was instantly greeted with the extremely sharp blades. Chen Lu had no other choice. His fifth soul ring lit up. He used his fifth soul skill once again, the three-legged dragon toad. He had obtained this soul skill after hunting and killing a 10,000-year three-legged dragon toad. When he used this soul skill, he could create another leg for his body soul. As he released a light barrier from his three-legged dragon toad, he could protect himself and greatly increase his fighting strength. Among the same generation disciples of the body sect, his fifth soul ring was the best among all the soul rings at the same level. He was recognized to have the strongest fifth soul ring in the entire body sect. Gaining 5 rings and attaining this ability before he was 18 years old was why he could represent the body sect in this tournament. At the same time, he was being nurtured as one of the future elites of the sect. Chen Lu, who wanted to get up and slammed, was smacked back to the ground. Although his three-legged dragon toad blocked the attack of the dark golden terraclaws, the terraclaws was still the dark golden terraclaw bear's greatest ability. It was extremely destructive, and wasn't inferior to Huo Yuhao's strongest version of the unparalleled chill. 5 enormous cracks appeared on the barrier, and the effect of the 10,000-year soul skill was instantly destroyed. Chen Lu was so devastated that he almost spat blood. Huo Yuhao had no intention of letting him off. He retracted his terraclaws and clenched his fist. A bright golden light extended from his body. Following this, he punched out at Chen Lu. Sovereign's Descent. This was the Sovereign's Descent formed after Huo Yuhao fused his spiritual power and various abilities together. He had already evolved the dragon god Doluo's skill into his own version. Chen Lu cursed in his heart, and a layer of golden light was released from his body. He had already used his three-legged dragon toad twice, and it wasn't feasible for him to use it a third time. As his soul power rapidly dipped, he had no choice but to activate his own invincible barrier. Ripples formed on the barrier as the blow slammed against it, but it gave Chen Lu an opportunity to catch his breath. He quickly channeled power into his legs and sprang up from the depression he was in. With how strong his legs were, he immediately flew high into the sky. Chen Lu was clearly aware of his greatest strength, which was his speed. However, he had been completely suppressed by Huo Yuhao during their confrontations. His speed advantage couldn't be realized. After using his fifth soul skill twice and initiating the second awakening of his body soul, he had already used up more power than Wang Yangfeng had earlier. Time wasn't on his side. Chen Lu hated Huo Yuhao a lot right now. It was his first fight in the entire tournament. His teammates and Princess Wei Na were watching him. How could he lose to a cripple? He flipped around in the air, and his energy flow smoothed out. Although he was affected by the chill from the ultimate ice, he managed to repress this chill using his cultivation. He took a deep breath and seemed to grow larger. His legs expanded, and the greenish-bronze projection flashed behind his back again. This time, Chen Lu had completely locked onto Huo Yuhao. Having jumped high into the air, he came swiftly crashing back down. He couldn't differentiate between Huo Yuhao's illusions, So he wanted to use his speed so that Huo Yuhao didn't have any opportunity to use his illusory tricks. This time, Huo Yuhao couldn't dodge the incessant attacks anymore. He looked up at his opponent in the sky and raised his right arm to block his body. A ring of distorted ripples was released from an ordinary-looking ring on one of his right-hand fingers. This ring of ripples changed into a gentle, milky white shield that protected him. Subtle golden patterns appeared on the shield. In order to prevent himself from being displaced, Chen Lu came down with only his physical body. His legs, which were now more than 2 meters long, appeared deformed. It was as if 2 bronze pillars were descending from the sky and crashing down. When the 2 bronze pillars struck Huo Yuhao's shield, there was a massive boom as a ball of greenish bronze light surged and blew apart, with Huo Yuhao at the center of the explosion. It felt as if a huge hammer had fallen from the sky and pounded the stage. The surrounding floor collapsed, and a terrifying destructive force caused countless fissures to extend across the stage floor. A figure shot back into the sky, and a bronze light started to undulate tremendously. As his screams echoed out, the figure that shot into the sky spat out fresh blood. As the bronze light dispersed, it became clear that the figure belonged to Chen Lu. The tremendous explosion caused debris to fly everywhere. As Chen Lu was driven back, Huo Yuhao's figure also became clear amid the debris. Rings of white surrounded his body and made it seem as if he were in a fairy tale. Layers and layers of glowing light undulated around his shield, as if they were shaking. Beneath him, there was an area 1.5 meters in diameter that hadn't collapsed at all. He managed to block Chen Lu's all-out attack. Chen Lu crashed down. When he landed on the ground, his calves had already returned to normal. However, he fell on his butt and grabbed his legs with both his hands while screaming in pain. Right now, it was very clear that his calves were in very unnatural shapes. Evidently, he was gravely injured. Huo Yuhao shut his eyes and sensed the surging life aura in his body. Through his spiritual force, he asked in some concern, "Brother Skydream, how are you?" He had used the life-reflecting shield to resist Chen Lu's attack. It was the strength the Skydream Iceworm had conferred onto Huo Yuhao after he turned into a spirit. Even though the Skydream Iceworm didn't have 4 orange gold soul rings like the Snow Empress, he was still a million-year soul beast. Although his blood couldn't compare to the Snow Empress, he was still the only soul beast in the continent to reach a million-year cultivation. The greatest strength of the life-reflecting shield was that it could reflect an attack after absorbing the impact of an attack. Once the attack was reflected onto the opponent, the harm that was inflicted on the opponent would be equivalent to the strength fed to Skydream Iceworm's body to restore the defensive strength of the shield. In the close combat that had just occurred, Chen Lu's all-out attack on the life-reflecting shield was fed back into his calves. How could he not be seriously injured? However, the Skydream Iceworm didn't have it easy against this attack either. He had indeed absorbed a huge amount of life power to replenish his own body, but he had also absorbed the entire impact of the attack, as he didn't have Huo Yuhao's soul power to support him. As a result, he bore the entire attack, which was stronger than an attack from a 7-ringed soul sage using his martial soul true body, all on his own. "I'm fine. The life power is very concentrated. However, I'll need some time to absorb it. At least, within 15 minutes, I'm unable to help you resist an attack of such a level again. Deal with it yourself." After hearing the Skydream Iceworm's words, Huo Yuhao heaved a sigh of relief. He couldn't use his own soul power to increase the defensive strength of the life-reflecting shield. However, he had to conserve his energy in the individual elimination round. He could only exploit the Skydream Iceworm's strength. With Chen Lu's cultivation, it was impossible for him to truly damage the life-reflecting shield. The Skydream Iceworm, only needing 15 minutes to recover, was already beyond Huo Yuhao's expectations. As lights shot out above his shoulders, Huo Yuhao was propelled over the depression. The unbreakable Doluor was already in front of Chen Lu. After checking out his condition, he immediately gestured to signal the end of the fight. Second individual elimination round. Huo Yuhao from the Tang Sect wins. Everyone from the Snow Demon Sect went silent in the waiting area. Wang Yangfeng jumped onto the stage and carried the critically injured Chen Lu down. After a brief inspection, he discovered that Chen Lu's calves had broken into 3 parts. It wasn't just an injury to his physical body, it was also an injury to his martial soul. He was highly unlikely to be able to compete in the team round. Fortunately, Chen Lu wasn't weak, and his calves were quite strong. Although they were fractured, his passageways weren't seriously hurt. After his teammates helped set his broken bones, he was in much less pain. Huo Yuhao personally used her snow lotus to help him recover. Even if he couldn't compete today, he could still recover within a week under her treatment, based on his control of his martial soul. Chen Lu's injury wasn't a big deal. However, what were they going to do in the following fights? Huo Yuhao had already won 2 fights. The sole emperors from the Tang sect had yet to compete. If this continued, the Snow Demon sect was going to be in an extremely disadvantageous situation. Huo Yuhao furrowed her brow. At this point, a cold-looking young man from the Snow Demon sect stood up and said, "Let me go." Huo Yuhao was stunned. As her gaze met his, the young man nodded at her. His body flashed, and he was already up on the stage. When Jingzhon announced Huo Yuhao's victory, Huo Yuhao was already making use of the time to restore his soul power. However, he felt his hair rising when this young man from the Snow Demon sect appeared on the stage. It gave him the same feeling as the time when the Sky Dream Iceworm met the Ice Empress in the extreme north. A soul master, who was at most 20 years old, actually gave him this sense of oppression, as if he were being watched by a savage beast. Evidently this young man's cultivation was quite high. Huo Yuhao focused his gaze and circulated his spiritual power to dispel that sense of oppression as he stared back at his opponent. This young man from the Snow Demon sect was tall and burly. All of his muscles were well-defined and toned. He stood almost 2 meters tall, and his shoulders were quite broad. His hair was split between half brown and half red, both sides of which appeared very soft. His eyes were narrow and long, and contained a cold, indifferent look. His nose was straight. Although he wasn't especially attractive, he was still slightly charming. Oddly, his skin was white, smooth, and glowed. When he raised his hands, his skin appeared very delicate. A strong opponent. Huo Yuhao immediately had this thought. He had the feeling that this guy was probably the strongest opponent he'd faced in the tournament thus far. He might not even be able to beat him if he was in peak condition. Had the Body Sect finally sent their team leader up, after losing 2 consecutive fights? The young man didn't rush to the center of the stage like the others had to reduce the time Huo Yuhao had to restore his soul power. Instead, he slowly approached Huo Yuhao. However, every step that he took increased the sense of oppression that he gave off. His aura also gradually started to grow. Huo Yuhao's expression changed slightly. With his acute senses, he was able to immediately sense how frightening his opponent was. His opponent's soul and spiritual power had reached a natural and seamless stage of fusion that was superior to even his own. Huo Yuhao's spiritual power was still greater than this young man's, but his soul power was weaker. When he fused them together, there were naturally some inequalities. Contrary to this, the feeling that his opponent gave him was one where his soul power and spiritual power couldn't be differentiated anymore. They seemed to be a single entity. Huo Yuhao had only experienced something like this from Elder Mu. Elder Mu had once told him that anyone who managed to do something like this had the potential to become a transcendent Doluo. If not, one's limit would be becoming a titled Doluo, no matter how great his talent and martial soul were. Taking a deep breath, Huo Yuhao calmed himself down. He looked at his opponent with a burning gaze and revealed a dim layer of golden light in his eyes. Soon afterwards, this layer of light quickly covered his entire body. A pure undulation comprised of his spiritual power surged towards his opponent. I might be inferior to you in terms of my fusion of soul and spiritual power, therefore I'll use my superior spiritual power to clash against you. He couldn't lose to his opponent in terms of his aura. The tall and burly young man revealed a shocked expression. He stopped in his tracks momentarily, before continuing to walk towards Huo Yuhao. Jingzhon didn't stop them from staring at each other. Rather, he was astonished. He could clearly tell that these 2 young men in front of him had surpassed him in certain realms, despite their inferior cultivations. Was this the standard that most outstanding soul masters of the younger generation could achieve? Xingzhong was certain that they'd surpass him in the future so long as they were given sufficient time to mature and improve further. When the burly young man reached Huo Yuhao, their clashing auras peaked. Even Huo Yuhao's wheelchair revealed a dim golden glow. Huo Yuhao seemed a little pale. His eyes had turned almost pure gold at this point, and even his hair had been dyed golden. However, his opponent still seemed as calm as ever. Back in the waiting area, everyone from the Tang sect was shocked. They all knew Huo Yuhao very well. Based on the situation on stage, it seemed like Huo Yuhao was at a disadvantage despite not being suppressed by his opponent's aura. This burly young man must be quite strong. Both parties, please give your names. Xingzhong said. Tang sect, Huo Yuhao. They were only a simple few words, but Huo Yuhao struggled to simply mutter them. The pressure bearing down on him was simply too great. Snow Demon sect, Long Aen. The young man said. Both parties, please step back and prepare for the start of the fight. Long Aen nodded at Huo Yuhao, not attempting to hide the admiration in his eyes in the slightest. He then turned around and walked to his spot. Even though the stage had been heavily damaged, he didn't seem to care or notice. As he crossed the fissures that littered the ground, there seemed to be an aura around him that carried his body over them. He crossed them like they weren't even there. When he turned around again, the aura and sense of oppression that he'd been directing towards Huo Yuhao disappeared. Huo Yuhao's spiritual power surged forward, but seemed to find nothing. His opponent was obviously right in front of him, yet his spiritual power had completely lost its target. Huo Yuhao groaned, and a hint of red surfaced on his face. However, he stopped himself from spitting out the fresh blood that had filled his throat. Strong. Huo Yuhao was sure that he'd met the greatest opponent in his life thus far. The body sect deserved to be known as the most mysterious and powerful sect in the continent. Long Aotian's cultivation was on another level compared to his own. He had to be the team leader of the body sect. Huo Yuhao took a deep breath to calm the surging blood and energy in his body. After a moment, he slowly pushed his wheelchair towards his own spot. Back in the waiting area, Wang Donga looked at Bei Bei anxiously. Bei Bei shook his head at her and said, "Don't worry, he knows his limits. We have to trust him. This Long Aotian is going to be a tough nut to crack. Sanxia, you should start preparing." "Yes." Shu Sanxia looked at him. After years of brotherhood, he immediately understood what Bei Bei meant by the look in his eyes. Huo Yuhao retreated to his side of the stage and turned his wheelchair around. He grabbed the handle with his right hand and pulled himself up even straighter. Long Aotian was facing him again, but the aura from his body wasn't nearly as strong as before. Despite this, he seemed to have fused with the stage where he stood. Unity of heaven and man. Had his cultivation reached such a level? Huo Yuhao's eyes lit up. This was the level that he was pursuing. It wasn't just him. In the resting area, Ji Juechen's eyes also brightened. Both he and Huo Yuhao had very high goals when it came to their fighting techniques. No one else could compare to them in this aspect. It was also because of this that they were more intrigued when they saw Long Aotian's current condition. Xingzhong gestured as he shouted, "Begin." Huo Yuhao quickly lifted his head. Instantly, his eyes brightened and 5 soul rings surged upwards from his body. Following this, 2 streaks of purplish gold light shot out of his eyes towards his opponent. He wasn't going to hold back anymore. After winning 2 consecutive fights, his soul and spiritual power had been greatly depleted. This third round would be a huge test for him. Huo Yuhao's first soul ring shone brightly, a hint of white hidden amidst the glow. Now that he'd increased his spiritual power to its limit, his imitation wasn't able to conceal the true color of his soul rings anymore. 2 streaks of purplish gold light swept through the air and instantly reached Long Aotian. Long Aotian didn't move from his position and made a weird gesture in front of his chest. He raised his right palm towards the left and curled his fingers. He then raised his left palm towards the front with his fingers straightened. As he did this, he released a shiny glow from his body. Surrounded by the glow, he seemed to have become a jade sculpture. When Huo Yuhao's spiritual shock arrived, Long Aen's sculpted body lit up with a blinding purplish gold light. Following this, it disappeared. His body swayed a little, followed by the shiny glow on his body dispersing. On the other side, Huo Yuhao let out a muffled groan, and he seemed very grim. He hadn't gained any advantage from this attack. However, he was slightly excited by how Long Aen had resisted his attack. He could sense that Long Aen had fused his spiritual and soul power with his entire body, and then fused it with the heaven and earth to resist his attack. Such an experience and sensation were very enlightening to Huo Yuhao. This was the realm that he'd been searching for. This was the direction that he'd been working towards after he entered the concrete immaterial realm. If he could achieve a breakthrough and enable his spiritual and soul power to fuse with his body, his cultivation, physical strength, and control could rise to yet another level. Such a live experience was incredibly valuable for him. At the same time, his opponent's strength was also stimulating Huo Yuhao's own potential. Long Aen was stunned after resisting this attack. He gently pressed his feet against the ground, and seemed to slide across the ground towards Huo Yuhao. Soul rings started to rise from beneath his feet. Yellow, purple, purple, black, 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 black. 7 soul rings of the best combination, out of which 4 were 10,000-year soul rings. This number had only been achieved by Wang Donga in the Tang Sect, apart from Huo Yuhao, who was special. However, Wang Donga was still 1 level lower than Long Aen in terms of cultivation. Huo Yuhao finally understood why the sense of oppression from his opponent had been so strong. Long Aen's abilities had reached an unprecedented level. 7 rings. He was a soul sage. Long Aen wasn't the only soul sage in this tournament. There had also been the 3-legged golden toad, Xiao Hongchen. However, everyone from the Tang Sect could tell that Xiao Hongchen had gained his 7-ringed cultivation through both medicine and some other special methods. He might even have sacrificed his future improvements, as well as overstimulated his current potential in order to have become a soul sage in time for the tournament. This video will end here.